The Not So Great Outdoors contains stories of a graphic nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
The outdoors are great, except when they're not.
Welcome to the Not So Great Outdoors. We're your guides. I'm Sap.
And I'm Piff, and this week we're talking about Frozen on Denali.
So not Frozen in Arendelle.
No, it's a little darker than that.
A little darker than Frozen. Got it.
There is ice, though, in both this episode and that movie, so...
Yeah. It's the only...
That's the only...
The only comparison.
There are no magical sisters. There's
no
not a caribou or a reindeer, whatever he is.
Yeah.
There's not a singing, dancing snowman. So,
dang it.
Welcome to 2022.
Well, this isn't the first one. Of
no, it's definitely not, but it's my first one in 2022.
Yeah. See, here, I'm over here singing Joe Bros, and you're about to kill the vibe.
Oh, yeah. All of the vibes are killed. I hope you enjoyed last week's chaos. This will not be like that.
No. Buckle up.
If you expected consistency here, we're not the show for you.
No.
That's okay.
It's our first buckle up of 2022.
It is our first buckle up of 2022.
Episode 2 and the first buckle up. Here we go.
So,
also, I've noticed the letterboard says burr. That seems accurate.
Yep. So
I'm scared. I'm gonna need more banter because I don't want to lose this happy feeling I've got singing "What Man Gotta Do." I don't want to lose that. I was so happy.
You know, I have a lot of build up here. Right. So it's,
So it's just anxiety building though. It's like it's all gonna fall apart. Everyone dies. The end. There we go. Here's how every one of Piff's stories go. It was a brutal murder. Everyone dies. The end.
Technically, there is not a murder. That also
everyone died in an avalanche. The end.
It segues really nicely into my first paragraph, which starts with, I was planning on doing a mass murder.
Yeah.
But a few weeks ago, Sav and I were discussing frostbite. And I realized that I didn't know the signs of frostbite. And so I completely pivoted my case so I could talk about frostbite.
So we're going to talk about frostbite. A lot of people got frostbite.
We will be talking about frostbite.
Okay.
So my main sources for this episode are the book Once Bitten by Nigel Vardy, one of the survivors.
Oh, hey, look at that. Not everyone dies. There's at least one survivor.
Right? As well as an episode of I Shouldn't Be Alive that I watched. It's season 2, episode 2, Frozen at 20,000 feet, as always.
There's a show called I Shouldn't Be Alive.
Yeah, you can watch it on Amazon Prime.
Huh. And here I was thinking Amazon Prime, video was useless.
You know, it's weird, the things that are on the different services, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. As always, full link of sources in the blog. And as I've warned Sav, this is going to be a long one.
Yeah.
So buckle up and settle in.
Get a cup of tea. Get a glass of wine. A thing of Sprite, if you're like me. Some chocolate. I feel like I need popcorn, but that'll ruin our audio.
Yeah, that nobody wants to hear you chewing.
I mean, I would mute it.
Yeah, but these are sensitive.
It would still catch it on yours, but still.
When we took those Jell-O shots last week, the mouth noises were disgusting. So I just mute. I just muted the whole thing.
Yeah, no. Mm-mm.
Are you ready?
No, I'm not ready because I feel like if you're starting 2022 like this, I just know it's just downhill from here. It's just gonna get darker and scarier, but that's the whole point, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
It's
not great.
It's year 2 of the podcast, so
we're diving deep in this one.
Diving up, yeah.
So first things first, let's meet our climbers, and we do have a single photo of all of them.
I was afraid the photo was gonna be of an avalanche or something scary and sad.
It's just a picture of the 3 of them on the mountain. So if you want to see the photo, it'll be in the blog.
Oh, that's smart. They have little things on their noses to protect them. That's smart. That's frostbite.
That's frostbite. The thing we're here to talk about.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So Nigel Vardy, who is the writer of the book that I read, and he is a motivational speaker now.
Well, he survived death, so avoided death.
So he was thrust into the limelight after this incident. Dove in. Make your own feelings about that.
Yeah.
He was only 29 years old at the time of this incident, and he was the youngest of the 3 men.
Okay.
He worked as an engineer and was from Derbyshire, England. On his website, MrFrostbite.com,
jeez.
He gives the following.
I'm sorry. That made me think of, is it It's one of the old like claymation Christmas. I'm Mr. White Christmas. I'm Mr. Snow. Da 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 da.
Yep. He's Mr. Frostbite.
He is. I'm Mr. Frostbite.
So on his website, he gives these facts. Quote, drinks whiskey, owns VW camper, loves pies. End quote.
It sounds like a Tinder profile.
Yeah, I mean, like most of his website is about like adventuring and stuff, but there was like...
I thought you were going to say it's about how awesome he is. I was like, okay, never mind. All right, that's better.
So anyway. This was Nigel's very first big climbing expedition. To be clear, he had climbing experience, but like a multi-week expedition is very different.
Yeah.
It's like, turning it up a notch, if you will. This is his first one. It didn't go great.
Clearly.
Anthony Hollinshead. He went by Ant, according to the book.
Ant?
Yeah, his name was Anthony.
I'm sorry. I'm feeling very judgy today. Continue.
He was 33 years old at the time and hailed from Shropshire, England.
Shropshire. That's fun.
Shropshire.
Say that with a British accent.
I cannot.
I cannot.
I can barely say it with my American accent. Do not make me say it again. He is described as a comedy character, full of life and always got a laugh. He also had a flair with food. He was able to turn the boring, dehydrated meals into something fantastic.
I highly doubt that. I find that
I think that you're just like really hungry.
Yeah, probably.
Like, so
everything's delicious whenever you're starving.
Those Builders, like peanut butter chocolate protein bars, I eat them when I'm backpacking. And your mom was like, hey, do you want me to get you any protein bars for Christmas? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, this is the kind that I like.
Not for Christmas as a gift, like
no,
to
like
have to eat
while we were at her house.
I just needed people to not think that
I got protein bars
for Christmas.
But so I had one on like a normal day at your parents' house, not, backpacking. And it is nowhere near as delicious.
No,
so that was a downer.
I don't like those protein bars. Zach loves them.
They're fantastic when you're really hungry.
I'm sure.
Anthony, Ant, Tony, whatever you want to call him.
I guess Ant makes sense if it's Anthony and not Anthony.
There's no H. It is Anthony. Yes. And he was best friends with the other climber on this expedition, and this pair had been climbing partners for years. So now we're going to meet his best friend, his climbing partner. The yin to his yang, if you will, Steve Ball. And they
Steve what?
Ball.
Steve Ball. Okay.
Yes. He was 40. Yeah, he was 42 years old from Staffordshire, England. Okay. Everybody's from England.
Yep.
And at this point, he had been climbing for 18 years, which is a whole ass adult human.
It is, yeah.
And again, Anthony and Steve, besties.
BFFs.
And they were kind of opposites in personalities, where Anthony was very comedic and like the jokester, right? And Steve was like much more serious.
Okay.
But they were best friends, and he was the most experienced person on this team. And this specific climb was like his dream, his ambition. And like, this is something he really wanted to do. And the other guys were just kind of like there for the fun, but this was like his big thing.
This was his like peak moment.
Yes.
Pinnacle.
Yes. So in May of 1999, the three men packed up their gear and they headed to Mount Denali in Alaska for what they hoped would be a marvelous adventure. Spoiler alert. If you didn't know, this is a podcast about bad things that happen outside. Mm-hmm. This is going to end badly. Although it could have ended worse.
For 2 out of 3, yeah. I'm assuming.
I'm just going to...
Okay.
Well,
you did say one of the survivors.
Yeah,
so
one of the survivors wrote a book.
Okay, so more than one. So one person dies. Or maybe they all survived, but it was just super traumatic and like they lost limbs to frostbite. Let's see.
We'll see. Buckle up, y'all.
I was about to say, buckle up. It's getting interesting now.
So now, though, it is time for some information about this mountain. You gotta get all the background info.
Have you noticed how I give like the fun facts and stuff like way early, and then I give the background and then I dive into the meat? Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah, but see, here's the thing.
Yeah, but that's not fun.
It's not fun for me. Also, like, if you don't know anything about Mount Denali, then you don't have any context for my story.
Yeah, I do.
So I got to tell you about the mountain.
I do need more information about the mountain.
Okay, and I have a lot of information, probably more than you want, but you
get excited.
I got excited. So,
Okay.
Mount Denali is North America's highest mountain peak, sitting at 20,310 feet or 6,190 meters. Mount Denali was previously named Mount McKinley, and then before that it was Mount Denali again. But the name was reverted back from McKinley to Denali in 2015. So
I did not know that. I've heard of Mount Denali and Mount McKinley. Did not know they were the same thing.
mountain.
Yeah.
Different names. So basically it was called Mount Denali for centuries by the indigenous peoples. And then a white man changed it to Mount McKinley.
Of course.
After probably himself, but I didn't look into that. And then in 2015, they were like, that was probably a bad thing to do. And they changed it back.
Okay.
Do
we have specs to compare it to Mount Everest? Because I think everybody just assumes that Everest is the biggest. So
Everest is the biggest in the world. Denali is the biggest in North America.
Okay.
So have you heard of the seven summits?
Yes.
Okay, so the 7 summits are the highest mountains on each continent. Everest is the highest of them all. It's over 8,000 feet. But Mount Denali is the highest in North America.
Ah, cool.
So yeah, or 8,000 meters, not feet. Sorry, I misspoke there.
I would have believed you.
Yeah, because this one is 6,000 meters. So it's 2,000 meters taller. And Denali means high one or great one, which seems fitting.
That is cool.
So here's some stats about like people trying to climb it. In 2021, last year, 1,007 climbers attempted to summit Denali, and a total of 530 were successful.
I don't know why I thought you were going to say 5. I was like, holy.
It's hard. Only about half of people make it to the summit.
Yeah.
But it's not that hard.
Yeah.
The first successful summit was in 1913 and was completed by Hudson Stuck and Harry Karstens. Since 2000, 25,125 climbers have attempted the climb, with approximately 53% of those climbers summiting. Most climbers attempt the West Buttress route, which takes on average 14 to 30 days to complete. It's kind of the more well-traveled path. It's a little easier. Not that any of this is easy, but in comparison to the other paths, right? So that's the most popular one. Our climbers were on the West Rib route, which is a more technical route. And for reference, 19 of the 1,007 climbers in 2020 used the West Rib route.
Okay. So it's not as
popular.
Chosen. Yeah.
No. It takes about 3 weeks to complete, and it's much more difficult, more technical, I guess I should say.
So, but if it's not as easy as the other one, why does the other one take up to 30 days?
Well, 14 to
on
30 days. Yeah. Part of the thing about like climbing these big mountains is like you have to kind of ferry your stuff up. And so if you are doing it faster, you're not carrying as much stuff. If you have a bigger group, or if you hire people to carry your stuff for you, you know, there's a lot of things that can make it go quote unquote faster.
Yeah.
Mount Denali is located within Denali National Park. This is one of Alaska's 8 national parks.
Wow. Which
makes it the state with the second highest number of parks, beat only by California, which has 9. I didn't realize there were that many in Alaska. And
I didn't either.
I guess I have to go to Alaska now.
Denali was the only one I knew of. So
there are 8.
Wow.
Denali National Park gets on average 600,000 visitors annually, which places it pretty much in the middle of the pack when it comes to visitor numbers. It's not the most visited, it's not the least visited, it's right in the middle. And Denali National Park was made into a national park in 1917 and was, quote, the first national park created specifically to protect wildlife, end quote. So that's a little bit about, that's setting our scene, if you will. We've got these climbers. They've been doing stuff like this before. One's the youngest at 29. This is his first like big climb. Our oldest guy's like, you know, got a lot of experience. This is his, you know, big project, and his best friend.
Who's just there.
He's vibing. He also has like tons of mountaineering experience. Has been climbing with Steve, you know. But so the 3 men arrived at base camp by a rickety airplane. This is the standard way to get to base camp, which sits at 7,000 feet. So keep in mind, 20,000 foot peak. They're at 7,000 feet. It's a lot of feet to go.
Yeah.
They camped out for a night at base camp, prepping for their adventure, and meeting Annie, the park employee that was stationed there. She provided daily weather updates via radio and was able to get a rescue going if it was needed. Also, just so that we all know, there's going to be a lot of detail about their trip that just sets up the disaster. It sets up the scene for what they're going through, how tired they are, how much was like already beat out of them by the mountain. So you're going to be like, Tiffany, why do you keep telling me what they do every single day? Because this is a buildup. So the next morning, day 1 of climbing, the trio sets out. They had planned for it to be 3 weeks to get to the summit and back down. They were the first group that was attempting this route in a couple of years because of avalanche conditions. So the route had been closed. So because they were the first ones in like 2 years, they were the ones forging the path, avoiding crevices, and leading the way. There was actually an American team following behind them on the same route, but they were planning a longer excursion, so they had more stuff, and they were just moving more slowly. But they had to do all of it first, which is harder.
Yeah, they were blazing the trail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They weren't moving very quickly. The weather for most of this was fantastic.
That's good.
Like, all things considered, because, like, you know, you're on a mountain.
It's cold, yeah, but like, at least it's not blizzard
for
every day.
This area, they were having great weather conditions. But a combination of the lack of a predetermined route, because they were literally forging the path right now, and the weight of their gear kind of slowed them down.
Did they have to, like, dig? You know, yeah.
Yeah. So every time they would camp,
like, how does that even look?
You have to like dig into the snow.
Yeah.
So that you can put your tent in it so that it's more secure.
Yeah.
And then additionally, they were like moving their supplies, and they'd like dig like a hole and like basically hide their supplies in the snow for safekeeping for like the next day, and then have to go back to camp. It's like a lot of back and forth and up and down on this mountain.
Yeah.
So the first day, while they were still on like more of like the well-traveled route the first day, and then the routes split, they made it 7 miles. But the second day, once they hit the untouched portion of their travels, they only hit 3.
But it's not like ascending on rope.
No.
It's just a really freaking steep hike. It's like the best way I can think.
It's kind of
a little
neither.
Bit of both?
It's so if you took the sport of ice climbing.
Yes. Okay.
And you took hiking.
Okay.
And you pushed them together with like lead climbing specifically.
Okay.
That's kind of my best understanding of what this is. Okay. I've also never climbed a mountain like this. So
but just for perspective, it's not on a rope going vertical. It's not walking like you would on like a leisurely hike. Like it's like a combination of like climbing and walking. Yeah.
Depending on where you're at and what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah. So a large reason that these types of treks take so long, like weeks, months, is not only because of the fact that it's absolutely miserable weather, it's freezing, literally, but you have to move all of your supplies in waves. So as you climb, you're going back and forth to put supplies at each camp along the way, to set up camps along the way, to move supplies ahead for your like next day travel, so that when you get to like your next camp, there's food there, but you have to like pick out the camp and dig it out. There's a lot of up and down. So on their third day, they moved supplies from camp 1 to their camp 2. On day 4, Nigel fell into his first crevasse. Crevasse. I don't know if there's a difference.
Yeah, no, I feel like it would still just be crevice.
They're spelled differently, so I feel like they're different. Yeah, crevice has an I and crevasse is VASSE.
Hold on.
Whereas crevice is like VI.
Into his first also. I don't think I didn't catch that. Okay. Crevice versus okay. Crevices are small, usually narrow cracks or gaps in a surface. Think of the word as a synonym of split, crack, rent, and cranny. A crevasse is a large fissure, especially in a glacier. Okay.
So this was
massive, big hole.
Crevasse.
A big crack.
Big crack. He fell into the mountain.
Yeah. The mountain ate him.
So how did he not die? Well, basic mountain safety, apparently. I'm not a mountaineer.
Yeah.
But according to Google, basic mountain safety indicates that you climb 30 feet apart, tethered by a rope. So if, or in this case when, someone falls, the other 2 people can stop them from falling to their death because you're attached. So you jam your ice axe in.
Tied together. And they plant their feet.
They brace themselves.
Yeah.
Basically, if you fall, you get yourself out. Because if they get any closer to you or maybe lose their footing, then now multiple people are in danger.
Yeah.
So they stop moving and you get yourself out. And also they're 30 feet away from you on a mountain. They can't do much, but stop you from falling.
They probably don't even know you're in the process of falling until you hit the bottom of the rope.
Until their rope gets taut.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's a miracle that y'all don't just all go. I don't know. The first two, I would imagine, but by the third, surely he would be like, oh, something's happening.
Yeah, and I don't have like experience with this, but I feel like you can like kind of feel the rope behaving weird.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So Nigel gets himself out. Mm-hmm. And they continued on, but he would fall into 2 more crevasses that day.
Nigel, you're supposed to be the seasoned mountaineer.
No, he's not. He's the youngest.
Oh, never mind.
Steve is our seasoned guy.
I'm sure Steve's ready to chuck Nigel off the side of the mountain by that point.
It's so funny. So I read Nigel's book, and so he is obviously the main character. It is his book. And it is very funny because he'll say things, and like when this happened, he was like, I just started laughing because I didn't know what else to do. And I'm like, I get that like response, but then like you did it 2 more times, and at no point did you think maybe I'm in over my head here.
Well, I mean, he probably couldn't afford to start thinking like that because he's got a long way to go.
They're only on day 4. Turn around, dude.
I guess that's true.
I think there's a little bit of pride happening in this.
Well, but on day 4, he only fell into his first one.
And his second and his third.
All 3 in one day?
All on the same day.
That I did not realize.
Yeah. So by day 5, the team had made it to 11,000 feet with 9,000 to go. Remember, they started at 7. Now they're at 11. 9 left. At this point, they could also see the American team coming up behind them.
Who is moving so much slower than them. Or supposedly.
Because they have all this stuff. They're planning on taking like a whole month. But this now is adding pressure. I would not
sign up to spend a month on the side of a mountain.
I mean, if you want to make sure you're like doing it right and you want to be prepared for that. I also would not
sign up for any of this.
Well, that's fair.
But like, I don't think I would want to spend a month on the side of a mountain in any way. Camping, in a cabin, like, no.
Can't relate.
I mean, maybe in a cabin, but that's it.
I literally like would love to become a mountaineer to do this kind of shit. So like, can't relate.
No, thank you. I'll be cheering you on from like my couch. I was gonna say from base camp, but no.
Base camp is 7,000 feet.
7,000 feet. I'm not doing that.
Rickety
either.
Airplane.
No. I'll hang out in the nearest town and pick you up when you're done. Like, no.
So the Americans are coming up behind them. And now they're like,
Americans are coming. The Americans are coming.
They were
British.
They were British. The Americans were coming. And they're like, we're not moving fast enough.
They're like, whoa. Yeah.
So, and at this point, they can already feel like, so before they like went on this climb, they got a little fluffy. And they could already like tell that they were shedding like weight.
I mean, yeah,
because
you're trying to keep yourself warm. You're hiking. You're essentially doing twice the mileage a day. Like what you move forward, you're going back and doing it again. So ultimately, you're doing it 3 times.
Well, usually it'd be like twice a day. So they like move some stuff forward, go back to camp. The next morning, they'd tear down camp, move the camp stuff forward, and then they'd keep going, come back. It was a whole.
I know nothing about any of it. Okay, clearly. But I feel like that's not the most... But I get it, though. You have to make sure everything is safe and everything gets there and all of that. But I feel like that's not the most efficient way to do this. But I mean, I don't know. It might be 100% necessary for reasons that I don't understand.
So I can kind of explain part of why it's necessary.
Okay.
So their initial climb up is when they're setting the ropes and they're lead climbing and stuff. So they need less gear.
That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. So they're like preparing.
They're doing
for the
all
next
like the
day.
technical part.
Yeah.
They're setting their lines and stuff.
Yeah.
So the next day it goes a lot faster, but they're also carrying all their shit the next day.
Yeah.
But
you don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
So like they drop all their stuff and then they go do the technical stuff again.
Exactly.
So yeah, you really are doing pretty much double the mileage every day.
Every day.
Yeah. They're like, oh, we went 5 miles. No, you didn't. You went 15 because you went back and forth, back and forth.
Oh, yeah. So, and also like at this point, they're starting to lose weight. And part of it is like the exertion level is so high. That's what we were just talking about. But also you only have what you can carry for food.
Yeah.
So
you can't carry, I'll have an extra snack today. That's 1 less for tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. And you see this with most long trek hikers, or long trekkers, I guess I should say, backpackers, mountaineers, like anybody who does this kind of stuff for a long amount of time. Even like truly a few day, like a weekend backpacking trip, you can tell. And it's nearly impossible to carry the amount of calories that you're expending, and you get hungry fast.
Yeah. I get hungry after like a couple miles. I'm like, I could use some trail mix. I could use a protein bar, like.
And like part of that is carrying like dense foods, so like those protein bars where you're getting 30 grams of protein, 40 grams of carbs, like 15 grams of fat, and you're like, that's something that's going to fill you up and like satisfy you for a longer time than like an apple. So it's, that trade-off and like carrying the stuff that is small and light and dense but is very nutrient heavy.
And
it's tricky to do anyway, let alone when you're planning like a month in the wilderness. And so up until, I'm going to keep telling the story now that we've talked about how hungry they are and they're already starting to lose weight. He's fallen into crevasses. Like,
is he still falling into them? Has he fallen into more?
I mean, he doesn't talk about falling into them anymore, but I'm just assuming at this point.
I mean,
he's done it. It's only day 5, right? Right.
I doubt. I mean, he did 3 the day prior. So like, there's at least 1. The days since our last incident counter is already at 0. And I don't think it's going to hit over 2 this whole time, probably, maybe.
Yeah. So up until, and this is the thing I haven't shared yet, up until this point, the mountaineers hadn't been doing a lot of technical mountaineering. It was mostly very shitty and dangerous hiking. On day 6, the real climbing portion of this route started.
So they weren't really even like...
They were still like stuck in snowdrifts and having to find route and not fall into giant crevasses or falling into them and having to get out. But they weren't doing like the climbing part
yet. Weren't going vertical yet.
That starts on day 6.
Jeez.
Okay, so on day 6.
So him falling is even worse because like, or unless, were they still tied together though? I guess they were.
You're always tied together.
Okay, never
If you're
mind.
on a glacier, you're tied together. Even if you're just walking across it, you're tied together.
Yeah.
It's a safety thing.
Yeah.
So day 6, real climbing starts. A combination of ice climbing to sunken snowdrifts would mark this day. That's basically all they did all day. They were either like struggling through snow or ice climbing. There was no in between.
Gross.
They made it to 12,000 feet where they dumped gear and then tried to go back down to the previous camp to sleep. And they didn't make it back to their camp until midnight because that day of climbing was so intense that it took them until midnight to get back to camp. So they took day 7, they rested and recovered. They were like, that was a lot. I'm going to take a nap. I'm going to sleep all day. I'm going to eat some food. We're going to hang out in our tent and make jokes.
That's it.
At this point, the American team had caught up with them.
And I'm sure Steve's like, fuck me. Like, I'm sure he's so annoyed.
And
he's probably willing to be like, you see this guy? You want to take him with you? Like, can we trade? That guy looks good. He looks like he knows what he's doing. You want to trade?
And like, again, the book is written by Nigel, and so it's Nigel's perspective. And so I don't know if he is harsher on himself because
he's the person who,
right?
Yeah.
But according to Nigel, this happening made it so much more apparent that they weren't moving as fast as possible. And there was like a guilt factor because he knows he's the newest person on the team. But it's not like he's never done anything like this before. He knows how to mountaineer.
That begs the question. If you've done this stuff before, how did you fall into 3 holes in one day?
Dude, I don't know.
Unless the snowdrifts were just weird and you couldn't see, because sometimes just the lay of the land and just like the way that snowdrifts are, just kind of like dunes, like sand dunes. Like you never really know until you're right up on a hole or you're right up on something, and then it's too late.
Until you're in the hole.
Yeah, and and it could have been that, but 3? 3
seems like
the
a
first
lot.
one? Okay, yeah, probably, but 3?
Yeah, and so my understanding based on, again, Nigel's like retelling of this is that it was kind of like what you're talking about with sand dunes where you didn't see it until you were falling in, but he was at the back of the group. He was either at the back or in the middle. Either way, there was somebody in front of him.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
following their footsteps. Like
that's the part that I don't understand. But again, I don't want to pass too much judgment because I'm not a mountaineer.
Yeah.
But I also don't understand.
Yeah, but if you're not first, because I mean, let's face it, I'm figuring Steve's probably in the very front.
Yeah.
he's going to know where to step. I mean, I'm sure even the most experienced mountaineer can fall into a hole.
Yeah, like, that's why you're tied together.
That's why you're tied together. But like, he's obviously not falling into these. If Nigel's in the middle, if I'm in the middle and the best guy is right in front of me, I'm stepping literally right in his shoe print. Like I am stepping right where he was stepping. And I'm
if you can see them.
If you can see them and if you can reach them, because like his stride could have been much bigger or whatever.
Yeah,
but,
and I don't know like how tall they were, so it could have been that.
But you know, sticking pretty close to his path.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, again, we have no clue. We have no idea.
I don't know. So day 8, right? Day 7, they took a rest day. Day 8, both teams, the American and British teams, make it to the same spot around 13,000 feet up and set up their next camp. Day 9 was traveling back to the cache to pick up more gear and moving it up to their new camp. Packed up, and once they like had moved stuff up, that's when they moved past on day 9 and get to 14,000 feet where they bury more gear before heading back to camp.
I feel I'm gonna need someone who's like actually a mountaineer to further explain to me. This just feels ridiculous. Like it feels like you're doing so much more work than you should.
So day 10.
Okay.
They moved their camp to about 13,700 feet. So that's another like 700 feet.
Getting closer.
Day 11 was a rocky day.
Specifically, all, except day 7. Day 7 was great.
Yeah, because they napped.
But
they hung out. They had a great time. No, so specifically because of their team dynamic. So how it had been happening was like Nigel and Steve would trade off lead climbing, and then they would get up first and they would like set up stuff and leave Ant to like cook basically and dig out his own stuff because they were sharing a 10. Ant had his own like one man, and so Ant is like, guys, I don't like how you've been treating me, which like 10 out of 10. Thank you for open and honest communication.
Why the hell is Nigel lead climbing?
Because he can. I mean, he's capable.
I mean, he's capable.
They're
but
all
like
capable.
Also, though, like why? And also, Ant and Steve are best friends.
I know.
Why are they not sharing?
There's this division. So, well, probably because Nigel didn't have tent is my best guess. I don't know.
Who knows?
I don't know why the tent situation was the way that it was. It took me until day 10 to realize that they weren't all sleeping in the same tent.
Why wouldn't they though? Share heat? Like why wouldn't
you? Because the bigger tent is heavier and it's also doesn't trap as much heat. Most like winter tents are no more than like 2 people because
that makes sense. Yeah,
trapping in the heat.
Yeah, you would think like, oh, put all 3 of you in the same tent, trap heat it up, but no, not really.
So Ant was like, hey guys, I don't like how you're treating me. And he also said that he was like left doing the cooking and feeling like their mother. Yeah. Anyway, he was like, hey, I'm not your mom. Stop treating me like your mom. I shouldn't have to do all of the cooking. I shouldn't have to do all of these things. And like making the coffee in the morning, making breakfast, like we're a team.
Yeah.
Let's be a team
trading
here.
Off. Yeah.
So they all talk about it and they're like, okay, we're going to fix this. We're sorry. Let's, bro it up. We're a team again. And
no team.
They go to leave the cache. And keep in mind, Ant is the one who has been momming these guys. Steve is our oldest, most experienced climber. He's not a baby. He's older than I am right now.
He's 29.
He is the youngest of these men.
Yeah.
They have their powwow and they head back down because they're leaving the cache to go back down to camp. And both Steve and Nigel fall. They're fine, but it's just comical. Like that might have been a little karma. Just
a little, just a bit.
But it was also possibly like the moment of levity that they needed after having like their heart to heart.
Yeah. Okay, so this is Nigel's, as far as we know, 4th fall.
As far as we know, it is his 4th fall. Yes.
Yeah.
But it did also mean that they were both covered in snow in a way that I can only imagine is extremely unpleasant.
Yeah.
So they climbed again, setting their next cache. And I'm just going to mention they're climbing, setting supplies, and then they'd set a fixed rope and like rappel down the next day. And so the first bit of climbing the next day, they're Jumaring up, which
for the people who don't know what that is.
I literally have a whole explanation.
Okay, I was like,
don't worry about it. I got it. So
That's
difference.
a new word to me.
Ice climbing is kind of like rock climbing but with like ice axes and like stuff. And you're like finding holds and you're setting gear and you're digging your crampons and you're physically climbing the wall, right? Jumaring is attaching mechanical gear to a piece of rope and ascending up using mostly your arms.
Okay. Yeah, I've done that. Okay.
So it's kind of like the difference between a rock climber and a caver who doesn't know about rope walking. Because cavers, we rope walk or we frog, which means our feet are involved. Jumaring is just your upper body.
Oh, but I've not done that. I've done the frog one.
Yeah, you use your feet.
Yeah.
But Jumaring is typically, I mean, technically you could add a foot thing to make it easier on your upper body, but it's typically like 2 hand ascenders, like sliding up the rope. But it's still easier than ice climbing.
Yeah. And so the mechanics behind that is up, pull, right? Yeah. Like slide them both up, pull.
Yeah, right? And I'm assuming you can do it in different ways. And again, I don't know if you could attach a foot thing to your Jumar to make it easier. That's how
we've done it. Like you pull one end your feet and you push the other one, right? Like you push to stand.
Truly, I don't know what system you've climbed on. That kind of sounds like a Texas.
I don't know.
System,
I've had things around my feet, and they were kind of attached. They were attached to one slide thingy.
Okay, so that's kind of Texas style.
Yeah. And then I stand up and push one way up, and then it stays, like it won't come back down. And so then you scrunch up. Think like inchworming, like you're inchworming up a rope. Like, and then things are on my feet. I scrunch into a ball and slide that one up, and then stand up, stretch the one. Yeah.
So that's probably pretty close to what they were doing.
Okay.
In all honesty, that's a pretty good description of what they were probably doing.
Yeah.
A typical caving setup, just for the record, would have a part of the rope attached at your foot.
Yeah.
Or you'd be attached like at your core, as opposed to it being attached to your, like the hand part being attached to your foot.
Yeah. Like those definitely moved in tandem. Like if I didn't move my hand up with it, it wasn't going to work completely correct.
So that's kind of like the difference. It could work.
It just, you weren't getting as far as you would like to.
It's not as efficient.
Yeah.
Day 12.
Day 12. Here we go.
Day 12.
It all fell apart. Just kidding.
Not yet.
Not yet.
It kind of all falls apart on day 16. So we're getting there.
Okay, we're getting there.
So day 12, they Jumar up to their cache with the goal of moving their camp to 16,000 feet. Keep in mind, at this altitude, the air is thinner.
Yeah.
They're exerting a lot of energy, and they don't have as much oxygen, literally, in their muscles. There's not as much in the air. Muscles are getting less oxygen.
Your brain is getting less oxygen.
Exactly. So all of this is happening.
Yeah.
So they make it to camp, dig out a place for their tents, but it was already 3:30 a.m. by this time, and so day 13 was rest day. Day 14, they moved up supplies from their cache to their new camp and established camp at 16,300 feet. Steve also lost a glove on day 14, which can mean the loss of a hand at these temperatures. But luckily, Nigel had a spare pair. So, but this is kind of like their first like real reminder, like gear is critical out here.
Yeah, like you're putting your life on the line doing something like this.
So day 15, Ant's tent had been hit by a rock in the night, which tore a hole in it and broke a pole. They did their best to repair it, but it was clear that time was running short. Their flights home were in 8 days, and things were getting real. The weather forecast from Annie wasn't perfect, but it also wasn't terrible, and the decision to summit the next day, day 16, was made.
So how much further do they have?
So they have a little under 4,000 feet left, but so I actually have a paragraph about their plan, how they're going to summit the next day.
Okay.
But basically, before I get into that, the mountain has got all these different parts, right? You've got parts where you're mostly hiking, you've got parts where you're ice climbing, and the summit is not as ice climby, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's still ice climby, but it's not as steep in my basic reading of this. I'm not an ice climber. I don't know. But it seemed like that 4,000 feet was attainable to do in one day.
Okay.
So the plan was to summit and return to camp in one fell swoop, which means they needed to pack light to maximize their speed. They left their stoves at camp, carrying only was absolutely necessary. Red flag.
So, yeah, I was going to say stove can equal heat source.
Yep.
So at these temperatures, at this elevation.
Yep.
Bad idea. Red flag.
It's not their best idea.
Yeah.
So
at least take one as like an emergency.
Yeah. So they climbed and climbed, taking turns, leading sections until the lead was too tired and needed to rest. Then the next guy would go. After a day of brutal climbing, they were less than a mile from the summit and at a place called the Plateau. Here, there is not much to stop the wind, and it was blowing in their faces. Visibility was awful, and they were being blown around. Nigel's face was gathering ice as his balaclava was falling. His nose and cheek had a layer of ice frozen from the exposure.
A balaclava, by the way, is like a head and face covering.
Yeah. It's kind of like a fancy ski mask.
Yeah.
It only got worse from here.
Ugh.
They managed to make it to a peak and realized they are on the wrong side of the summit. It means nothing to me, but they didn't summit, and it wasn't where they were intended to be.
But they did. Or didn't.
They did not summit.
Okay.
They were at a peak, but not the peak.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So at this point, Steve is suffering from hypothermia. They needed to get out of the wind, and they needed shelter. So now let's take a second to talk about hypothermia.
I was going to say, let's talk about that.
So, hypothermia is characterized by shivering, exhaustion, confusion, memory loss, slurred speech, drowsiness, and fumbling. It's kind of like being drunk, but from the cold and not as fun.
Yeah.
It can be deadly if you can't get out of the cold, especially on a mountain where your decision-making, clear head, and coordination are paramount. Not to mention, freezing to death sounds like a terrible way to die.
Yeah, it does.
So they're like on this plateau, basically. And Steve is like obviously suffering from hypothermia. So they find a crevasse at the base of the summit and literally like pull rocks out to widen it so that they can crawl inside of it. Because this isn't one that goes like vertically. It goes like into the mountain.
Okay. So it's like a cave.
Kind
Not really,
of.
but
yeah.
Yeah.
It's still like kind of dangerous to be inside of, but yeah. So they widen up this hole and crawl inside of it for a bit of shelter. So they get inside. They use their like packs to block the wall so that there's like wind not blowing in. And they basically group bear hug Steve to hopefully warm him up. He was super delirious. He was like rambling on and on. And I have annoying, but maybe, but alive.
Yeah, alive.
Nigel at this point is drifting in and out of consciousness while they're like huddling together. And at some point he like woke up and like separated from the other two, and they decided that they should call for help. Yeah. They being Nigel and Ant, because Steve is like delirious, right? Yeah. So to reach help, because they have a radio, Nigel has to crawl out of the hole they're in because that's how radios work.
Yeah.
And he radios for help, unfortunately. Because of the distance, the terrible weather that had happened, they couldn't like communicate directly. So he could hear them clearly, but they couldn't hear him clearly. It was more like they were getting like static. And so the park was asking questions to determine who they were, where they were, if there were injuries, and if they needed a rescue. And so on the radio, he could like beep back basically. So he was like, they were like beep once for no, twice for yes. And they're like, is this party? No. Is it this party? No. And so they're just going through like the list of everybody on the mountain until they get to their party. And then they figure out, so once they know what party it is, they know which route they're on, they know who's in the party, all of this stuff. And so then they're like, do you need a rescue, basically?
1, 2. 1, 2. 1,
and
2.
so he was like,
yes,
we do. And so they're like, listen, the weather's super bad. We cannot get a rescue up there right now because it's too dangerous. But we should be able to call back tomorrow morning. And we're going to send up a plane to figure out where you're at so we can start the rescue. But it's not going to be tonight. You have to make it through the night. So
and
then
going back is not an option. Like, you know, like going back with Steve.
With Steve like this right now, no.
Like, no, like going back's not at all an option.
They cannot do it. So the next morning, there was hope. Steve was better.
Good.
He was responding, and the worst of the hypothermia seemed to have passed. So at 8 a.m., Nigel goes to the entrance to see the plane and call on the radio. But there was some bad luck. He drops it. and it tumbles down the mountain. This is dramatic.
Nigel.
I mean, he's suffering from other things at the same time right now. So like,
anybody, but
like, right. So the team also realizes that at this altitude, in these conditions, the likelihood of rescue is extremely unlikely. There's never been, at this point in time, an air rescue at this type of elevation. They need to self-rescue. So they leave the safety of the hole they had been in, and Nigel's like, I wonder if I can get that radio. I wonder if it still works.
I doubt it.
He falls.
Of course.
Slipping and sliding down the mountain. By sheer luck, he stops right beside the radio.
Does it work?
No.
Of course not. Why?
It's in one piece, but not working. And keep in mind, these are extremely cold temperatures. Technology out there, it's not going to happen. So he like shoves it down into his jacket. He's like, maybe it just needs to be warm, but he hobbles back up the mountain and joins everybody else. It wasn't like he fell like thousands of feet.
Sit on your butt and slide all the way down here to me. Like,
well, but they needed to get to the route because they needed to get to their stuff. Yeah. So they hear a plane. But at this point, because lack of visibility, side of the mountain, they never see it. It never sees them.
This is why all of your gear should be obnoxious.
I mean, did you see that photo of them?
I mean, it was. I know, but I'm just saying this is just all the more reason why all of your gear, everything should be obnoxious.
Bright colors.
It doesn't need to match. It just needs to be visible.
Yeah. So they start their trek back down the mountain. But at this point, Nigel is suffering from frostbite. His feet were painful. He couldn't see out of his left eye. He kept falling and he was being led by Ant, like holding on to him, like, you got to come this way because he couldn't see. So now it's time for some frostbite signs. The reason we are all here.
Yes.
Because I wanted to talk about frostbite.
Yes.
Frostbite signs, according to mayoclinic.org. Thank you, Mayo Clinic.
Yes.
First, cold skin and prickling feeling. Then numbness. At this point, your skin starts to change color. Red, white, bluish white, grayish yellow, purple, brown.
Grayish yellow comes before purple.
Yeah.
You would think it would go like blue, like the grayish blue, and then purple.
Yeah, but it's cold, so it's not a bruise.
Yeah.
The purple is it dying.
Yeah.
So we all know that. While your skin is changing color through that terrifying rainbow, you might also be having the following symptoms. Hard or waxy looking skin, clumsiness, muscle and joint stiffness. There are 3 stages of frostbite. The first is frost nip, which I think is very cute sounding. Frost nip. And it is the most mild form.
Outside. Yeah.
This is primarily characterized by numbness and does not cause permanent damage.
So we've all probably experienced
had a little frost nip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you're a kid, you stay outside playing in the snow a little too long.
Yep. The next stage is superficial frostbite. This is where you're going to start seeing those changes in skin color. The skin will start to feel warm to the touch, which is a bad sign.
That's scary.
If you rewarm at this stage, you may get a large blister or have mottled skin, but you'll probably be fine. The worst and final stage is deep or severe frostbite. At this stage, the skin has turned white or blue-gray, and you lose all sensation in the area. Muscles stop working because the cold has penetrated to the layers of tissue underneath, or the tissues underneath the layers of your skin.
Yeah.
So your muscles stop working.
They seize up. Probably.
Yep.
Yeah.
They freeze.
They literally freeze. Yeah.
And the skin can turn black and hard as it dies. It can result in loss of limb or large portions of skin.
So that's where our boy Steve's at, I'm assuming.
Nigel's the one with frostbite. Steve had hypothermia.
Okay, Nigel has frostbite.
Nigel has frostbite.
And Ant is leading Nigel.
Ant is leading Nigel.
Yes, okay, I'm with you.
So at this point, they need to make a decision, and they need to make it fast. Nigel can't walk, and he definitely cannot climb or rappel. And so there's a discussion, mostly between Ant and Steve.
Yeah, because Nigel can't go
anywhere. He can't really participate here.
Yeah, he can help discuss, but I mean,
yeah,
ultimately it has to be up to them.
Yeah. The decision is made that Steve is going to go down by himself for help, while Ant stays with Nigel to try to keep him alive.
Okay.
So there was
not the worst decision I've ever heard of.
We've got our most experienced guy going for help.
Yeah. And second most experienced staying to help.
Yeah.
Keep that guy alive. And he's the cook. I mean, you know.
And he's also like our lively comedian.
Yeah. He's going to help keep it light.
As light as you can when you're freezing to death, quite literally.
Mm-hmm. Have they made it to their gear?
No, they have not.
Oh, great.
They are on the plateau.
Oh, they're still there. They have. Okay, so Nigel has climbed back up from trying to retrieve and ultimately retrieving the radio, but it not working. They've had this discussion, and then frostbite sets in as they're trying to figure out what to do.
Yep.
Probably has something to do with his fall. He probably got covered in snow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wet.
Well, and the day before, remember his like face was freezing because his balaclava kept falling down.
Yeah.
So like, it's not a good time.
It's not great.
There was another route nearby, that one I talked about earlier, that's super well traveled.
Yeah.
And for a mountain route, right? And so Steve is like, I'm going to try to make it to that route because then we'll probably be able to find more climbers and we can get help. So Ant and Nigel huddle together in like a small little like rocky shelter. It's not like a shelter like the hole they were in the night before. It's more like some rocks blocking the wind.
Yeah, like
basically.
not as great.
So
like
they
a three-sided type of deal.
Like a one-sided type of deal on the side that the wind was blowing. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So they're like huddled together in this like tiny bit of shelter, waiting and hoping for rescue. And now the rest of my story, we're going to be flipping back and forth between like Nigel and Ant and Steve, because now they're split up.
Yeah.
So Steve, he is climbing as best he can, but he is struggling.
I mean, he just went through, a horrible bout of hypothermia.
Yep.
So I mean, his body is wrecked. All of their bodies are wrecked. But
at this point,
he was really, really bad the day before. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
And there's nobody else to take the brunt of the climbing work. He's doing all of it himself.
Yeah.
He's tired. He's struggling to find the route, and he feels the pressure of his teammates' lives on him.
Yeah.
To him, he's like, if I don't make it, we all die.
Yeah.
Right? He decides to down climb basically a straight slab. Now, down climbing in general, even worse with ice climbing, is dangerous. And it's difficult under any circumstance.
Let alone after you've had your ass kicked.
Yeah. But he is hypothermic. He is alone. And he doesn't have a rope. It's even more dangerous.
So he's sliding. He's going down a slide.
Well, he's got his ice axes, right?
Oh, that's true. Okay.
He's axing
so he's
in.
got that, but still, that's so dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And as he's ice axing down this mountain, he loses his footing or his grip, his ice axe, whatever. And he falls.
To his death?
He slides down the mountain about 1,100 feet. His right leg is fractured. His left leg is broken in 12 places.
Oh my gosh.
Meanwhile.
But he survived.
We'll get there.
Okay.
Let me build dramatic.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, as Ant and Nigel are waiting, they hear the sounds of helicopter blades. Over and over.
Which is great, but also like, no.
Don't worry. Well, don't worry about that. Over and over, but it doesn't appear to see them. It doesn't get high enough for their bodies to come into view. Every time they become hopeful, but are then let down. The helicopter doesn't see them. Half of this group is slowly freezing. The other half is alive, but bleeding badly.
Yeah.
But Steve, who is literally the hero in this entire thing.
He really is, yeah.
Is refusing to stop looking for help.
So with a leg broken in 12
Both of
places.
his legs are broken in some capacity, but he's determined he's going to find help.
Yeah.
And again, he believes that if he doesn't get there, they're going to die on this mountain. So he starts climbing again. Back up. He starts
dragging himself, essentially. There's no way he can support any kind of weight.
Yeah. So he's back up that sheer ice sheet that he just fell down, pulling himself up with his arms and his less broken right leg. He slips again.
Fast forward.
I can't.
Fast forward.
Gotta tell you all the details.
This was his dream.
I know.
Piff, this was his dream.
I know.
And he is slowly dying, essentially.
It's not good.
Piff.
So he falls again. His left leg is now worse.
It's worse than being broken in 12 places?
Yes. Because before, at least it was broken in 12 places and like all of his bones were still in his body.
Pip!
So he, after his second fall, he can tell he's like in more pain. And so he pulls his layers of clothing back because he needs to look at it.
No.
The bone is sticking out of his leg.
Oh my gosh, Pip.
And like, if that's you, how do you handle that knowledge? I don't handle it well.
I throw up. That's it. I know. I died after the first fall. Let's be real. Like, I did not make it.
So he is a much more experienced and stronger person than both of us. Yeah. And he deals with this logically. He does what he can to stem the bleeding. With his bone out of his leg, he just pushes everything back and splints his own leg with an ice axe.
He pushes the bone back
he just
in?
He's like, this is supposed to go this way, and splints it with his ice axe. Literally a badass.
Literally.
And he's
also,
like...
But also, imagine the amount of shock his body's in. I mean, he knows he's in pain, but he's probably not in, like, the level of pain he would be in if he were at a normal temperature. You know what I mean? Or if, like, he hadn't have just fallen 1,100 feet.
Twice.
Yeah. You know? So his body's like, no.
So then, after splinting his leg with an ice axe, he's like, well, I guess it's time to see if I can stand. He's still trying to save his friends.
If he doesn't make it, I'm quitting this fucking podcast. If he doesn't make it, Piff.
So he can't walk.
No.
Because he tries, he can't. Can't really crawl.
No, he can't go anywhere.
At this point, he's convinced that they are all going to die on this mountain and that it's his fault. He brought them there.
Fault.
He fell. He's not getting help.
It's not his fault.
I'm just setting a scene.
I know.
Let's hop back to our frozen pair.
No! I hate you. I actually hate you right now. I love you, but I hate you.
So night is coming, and they realize, this is day 17 now, they realize they're going to have to spend another night in the freezing cold with no gear. Nigel, in a stroke of hypothermic idiotness, pulls his hand out of his glove to take a look at it.
Why would you not?
He has hypothermia and frostbite. Like, at this point, he has no brain cells.
He's just vibing.
Yeah, and so he's like
just freezing.
What's
he's
up,
probably
hand?
high. Yeah.
Again, hypothermia is like being drunk but cold. So, so not fun.
Yeah.
And he's also got frostbite. And so he's like, my hand feels weird. So he pulls it out to look at it. His fingers are white and he cannot move them.
Yeah.
Frostbite has now set in, not only on his face, but also his extremities.
Yeah.
But then, the whir of helicopter blades again.
I swear, if they miss them, I'm walking out of here.
This time, it sees them.
Okay, I was ready. I was gonna get up and walk out and be like, no,
I'm done.
Yeah.
So the radio that he's been like holding inside of his body to warm up suddenly starts working again.
Because they're in range, yes.
And it bursts to life. They can communicate with the helicopter.
Help, help, help.
The helicopter gets them hot soup and instructions for being carried off. Ant straps Nigel in while the helicopter goes to refuel. So basically he gets like a little litter, puts Nigel in it, straps him in. Helicopter comes back, attaches him, and then he straps himself
Ant by
in.
himself? Okay, I was like, wait, so Ant gets left on the side of this mountain?
Listen, Ant,
like, we'll be back.
All of this, Ant's doing fine.
Okay.
Nigel's like over here completely frostbitten, delirious.
Yeah.
Steve is broken at the bottom of a mountain.
I know, they don't know where he is.
Exactly. And so they basically, it was the helicopter, a rope, and then them. So they were dangling off of the helicopter, which is terrifying but effective.
Yeah.
So
And were they the first air rescue, like at that elevation?
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, it sucks that it had to happen, but I mean, you know.
Yeah. And I don't have this, but I think, and I could be wrong, so like don't yell at me if I am, but I think that this is like the highest air rescue that has ever been successfully done or something like that. Like it's wild.
I mean, I would.
It's definitely up there. If it's not the highest, it's definitely up there as one of like the highest. So Steve, however, is still on the mountain At this time, Ant and Nigel didn't realize this because they thought that Steve got to the bottom and sounded the alarm.
Yeah, they thought he's waiting for them.
Yeah. And so like they're also in like no proper state to ask questions because they're like both on the brink of death themselves.
They're freezing. And poor Nigel's half dead.
Yeah. And they're just like getting sent to hospitals, right? And in all actuality, so the call that Nigel made that first night in the crevasse.
Yeah,
that's the call that ended up getting this rescue to them. Back to Steve. Steve is still alone on the side of the mountain.
I see your resources. If it's he died on the side of that mountain trying to save his friends, I quit. He died on the side of that mountain trying to save his friends.
Can I finish? Let me finish. Steve is still alone on the side of the mountain.
I thought you were going to say alive. I was like, yes, no.
And night is coming. He is alive at this point.
I mean, yeah, but I thought you meant nowadays. He's still alive.
He knows that he needs shelter and digs out a place where he can lie and at least be out of the snow and the wind. At this point, Steve says, if I don't stay awake, I die.
Yes.
He huddles in for a cold night, hitting his legs to jolt the pain to keep him conscious. The temperatures would drop down to negative 58 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 50 Celsius. Steve has been outside in the cold, losing blood and hope for over 15 hours. He cannot move. But then, rescue comes.
Yes! I swear I was going to quit this podcast. I swear I was walking out of here.
Everyone, including Steve, is amazed because he is still alive.
Yeah.
The three men are all treated at a hospital in Alaska before being able to go home to England, where they received further treatment and rehabilitation. Steve lost all fingers on his right hand, his left hand from mid-palm to fingertip, his left leg below the knee, part of his right foot, and a little bit of his nose.
Yeah.
Nigel lost all of his fingers and all of his toes, as well as part of his cheek and nose. Anthony made it out the best, losing only 2 fingers.
Wow. How did he stay so much warmer than the others?
No idea. Nobody really understands. I want to know what
gear he had on.
He had the same gear as Nigel. What was
he wearing? The
same stuff.
Wild.
Yeah, that was something that Nigel talks about in the book. He was like, I don't understand because it was the same coat, the same gloves.
Maybe his adrenaline was pumping so much because Nigel fell. So he took a hit. He didn't have the chance to be pumping adrenaline and being I have to keep this person alive. Maybe Ant's body was just you can't afford
to be cold
because you have to keep this other guy alive too. Maybe. Who knows?
So, all 3 men still adventure, still climb.
Still adventure, still climb with no fingers or toes? Wow!
And still, as Steve put it, go back to the mountains.
That's so cool. I was ready to quit this podcast, I'm not gonna lie. Wow. Not really.
So, Nigel became known as Mr. Frostbite and travels around doing motivational speaking. And I would like to end on this quote that starts his book, but I really feel captures these men's outlook on life. Quote, I don't want to die in an unused body. End quote.
Oh, I want to cry. I was honestly expecting everyone to die because you built this up the bad one. You were man, this really wasn't. You, I don't know what to call you. The first word that came to mind was not nice. I'm not going to do that because you're so nice. But, geez, my heart can't take this stuff. I am so empathetic. You can't do that to me.
But they all lived.
But they all lived. I can't really say and they lived happily ever after.
No.
But they used their body.
Yeah. And so again, I watched that episode. They're all on it. So they all are in the episode talking about it, which I think is really cool.
What does it look like? They've lost part of their noses. What does that?
They like
Is it
skin
interesting?
grafted it back on. If you guys want to look up photos of them now or what frostbitten feet look like, you
I don't
feel
want
free
to know
do
what
that.
frostbitten feet look like, but like I want to know what their faces look like now.
I was not going to include any of those photos because it seemed like a slippery slope. Also, frostbitten feet are so gross. You just be glad that you've never, never had to see. It's
no,
it's
I'm
horrible.
not looking at that.
It's horrible. Don't look it up.
I'm not.
I saw so many frostbite photos now. I just, I'm never going to be able to get that out of my brain.
Nope. I'm good. I'm good without that in my brain. Yeah. Wow. See, I was expecting to cry. I really was. Because I was like, Steve is laying at the bottom of this thing. And he tried so hard. He was saving his friends. Like, holy crap, what a badass. Like, I'm sitting here like he's going to die alone on this mountain trying to save his friends for his dream thing he wanted to do. Like, I'm emotionally wrecked at the moment. I'm so glad they all made it.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, that's terrifying. And see, it's things like that that make me like never want to adventure ever again because I don't. But then also, I love adventures and I want to go on adventures. I've never really been on a real adventure before.
They all survived, and they didn't want to die in an unused body, so they're still using them. So
how do you climb with no fingers?
So I mean, there are ways to alter.
Your big toe is so much of your balance that I'm just like, how do you climb and all that without toes? I know it's possible. I'm sure it's possible, but just like,
I mean,
I'd be interested to know how they've modified stuff to do that because that's awesome.
So that is our survival story for January.
I hate you. I love you, but I hate you. I really thought everyone died in a horrible avalanche and their wives and children never saw them again. Like, I thought this was going to be so bad. You made it look like it was going to be bad.
That was on purpose.
You wanted me to think it was going to be horrible.
Yes. I hope everybody enjoyed the survival story for January.
Yes. I'm glad we kicked off with the survival story. Is next time going to be brutal murder? Probably. You said mass murder.
I do have a mass murder on the docket.
Yeah.
I don't know when it will be happening. It may be in February. It may be in April. I don't know. We'll see.
So thank you guys. We hope you enjoyed our rescue. I am very surprised.
Surprise rescue.
Yes. That was pretty great. You guys will hear the outro. You know where to find us. But remember, so if you guys liked having Josh on our episode last time, I almost said last week, 2 weeks ago, remember he said he will come back and do an episode to talk about his ghost adventures. No pun intended. Did not. Yeah. Whatever. His spooky adventures. If we get how many?
Any.
So if you just, okay, I'm going to set a number because I feel like we have to set a number.
We just need somebody. We haven't had a new review in months.
We need a new review on Apple Podcasts. Please, for the love of all that is holy, we will send you 3 stickers, 2 stickers, whatever. We love to please the people. The people just got to tell us what they want.
Tell us
what you want. All right. Anyway, thank you. We appreciate you. Happy New Year. And in the meantime, stay safe out there.
Thanks for watching. Music by Purple Planet. Art by Ruby Congrove. Logo by Catherine Dodds. For more information and our sources, head over to notsogreatoutdoors.com. For updates and announcements, make sure you follow us on Instagram and Twitter at NSGOPod. Don't forget to subscribe on all of your favorite podcasting platforms.